2 weeks earlier, she had lost 21 members of her extended family.
The soldiers set up their ambush very well. The village youth resolutely stand their ground in the face of the soldiers.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 22 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org, our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege to be invited to the United Nations building to view the film Where Should the Birds Fly by Fida Qishta. Qishta is from Rafah in the Gaza Strip, and much of her film is video she took during the Israeli massacre in Gaza 5 years ago, which the Israeli military calls Operation Cast Lead. We will begin the program with a trailer from that film. Then video from the town of Fida Qishta near Nablus, where 85-year-old Saeed Jasser Ali was tear-gassed to death on January 1st. Lastly, 2 interviews about the campaign against extreme strip coal mining, mountaintop removal, including one with a young man who scaled a 160-foot crane so he would be able to unfurl a banner.
I was born and raised here. Rafah is a town of fishermen and farmers, and thousands of Palestinians still living in camps, refugees forced from their homes by the creation of Israel. I remember the night the Israeli bulldozers came without warning. We hoped the white flag of peace would make them stop, but in the next 6 hours they demolished 60 homes in our neighborhood. A few years after we lost our home, I learned how to use a camera and became a videographer working with human rights observers. We often accompanied farmers who were trying to work their fields. Even the presence of international observers does not prevent daily random Israeli gunfire. The Israelis seem to be playing a deadly game with Palestinians who are just trying to work and live. Despite the danger and the gunfire, fishermen continue to take to the sea. Do they consciously intend to deprive them of the ability to make a living and feed their families? Israel's war in Gaza began without warning on December 27, 2008, with a massive F-16 and drone assault. They called it Operation Cast Lead. We call it a massacre. I had to capture the moment. I could see fear in everyone's eyes. The screaming children were the most horrible sight. But I couldn't leave. My camera is the only weapon I have against these attacks on the people of Gaza. The war in Gaza lasted 3 weeks and 2 days and caused 1,417 Palestinian and 13 Israeli deaths. A woman told me that I should meet a 10-year-old girl named Mona. 2 weeks earlier, she had lost 21 members of her extended family. Although she spoke without emotion, she was incredibly articulate. I went back to see her several times. With every visit, Mona repeated to me without any emotion details about the terrible day in January 2009.
هم غاليين علينا كتير وكانوا يعني هدول الشهداء كانوا يطخطخوا فيهم ويموتوا فيهم.
I think that Mona, like all of us in Gaza, is numbed by the destruction of our lives. So we keep repeating with more detail what has happened to us. The real question is the imprisonment of the people of Gaza. Why the continued occupation of Palestinian land and the massive collective punishment of its people? These are Palestinian stories. It is my story and the story of Mona Samouni.
The interviews Qishta did with the little girl Mona are really quite startling. This girl saw most of her family wiped out, but she's still able to talk about it coherently and in detail. If you get a chance, see this film. Now to Fida Qishta, Ryan Prater narrates this piece, translating the words of cameraman Odai Quaddomi.
My village, Fida Qishta, a Palestinian village located near Qalqilia, just 17 kilometers east of Nablus. The Israeli occupation has confiscated 600 dunams of Palestinian land for the nearby illegal Israeli settlement of Qaddomim, which was established in 1975. Since the Second Intifada, the occupation has closed the main road for the village. Due to this closure, the distance between Fida Qishta and Nablus has become 27 kilometers. This has created great suffering and economic hardship for the village's inhabitants.
انت في لحظة من اللحظات وفي يوم من الايام بصحى احمل رسالة يعني صراع الارادي موجود انت بسلاحك ضعيف رغم سلاحك رغم اعتادك حشرة بتراهن على ارادتنا لا يمكن ان تهزم لا فيك ولا في امثالك
Every Friday, I wake up and get ready. I prepare my equipment for shooting and carry my camera to the site of the protest. My camera is a companion that never leaves my side during the demonstration. At midday, while the older villagers go to pray, the youth of Fida Qishta begin their protests against the Israeli occupation. Despite the overwhelming presence of the Israeli occupation forces, the youth bravely give voice to the demands of the people of the village. What distinguishes the demonstrations in Fida Qishta from others that take place across the West Bank is the violent tactics the Israelis use to suppress the people. But as the violence of the soldiers increases against the people, the will and steadfastness of the people grow stronger. The leader of the Israeli occupation forces plans an ambush, preparing his troops for the violent suppression of the demonstration. At the same time, the demonstrators study the positions of the soldiers in order to ensure the safety of the people participating in the protest. I stand ready to film everything that transpires. I take up a position in the center, between the demonstrators and the soldiers. Many times, I get hurt. The soldiers always try to disrupt the protests by firing large volumes of tear gas. Usually, the ambush by the Israeli occupation forces fails. This failure causes them to become angry. When they get mad, they take out their fury on the houses of the villagers, randomly shooting tear gas and stun grenades in the direction of people's homes. Sometimes, they even take their anger out on the journalists by kicking them or sending them away, preventing them from shooting the suppression of the demonstration. In an attempt to separate the demonstrators, the soldiers violently attack them, forcing them to retreat. A group of soldiers then starts to set up an ambush. The people continue to retreat. The soldiers set up their ambush very well. The village youth resolutely stand their ground in the face of the soldiers, braving the tear gas and the stun grenades. The soldiers pretend to retreat. The youth feel empowered by their temporary victory. The youth then begin to move forward. Unbeknownst to them, however, another group of soldiers have taken up a hidden position close to where the youth are advancing, patiently waiting to trap them. As the demonstrators move forward, the soldiers emerge from their hiding place and attempt to catch them. Sometimes the ambush succeeds, while sometimes it doesn't.
Last week at the Keystone XL Vigil in New Haven, I spoke to a young woman who talked about a protest that had been held in Stamford in front of a Swiss bank that is financing mountaintop removal. I heard about the case of the Stamford 14. As a result, I went to a fundraising party and I interviewed two people there, Ricky Draper and Dan Cohn. Ricky, so tell us about this campaign about mountaintop coal removal and the arrests.
So our group is called Hands Off Appalachia, and we're an urban-based campaign in support of folks working in the coal fields of Appalachia. We target the financing of mountaintop removal coal mining by one of the top funders, UBS, which is a Swiss-owned wealth management company. So we've been working for 2 years to try to get the bank to stop funding mountaintop removal, and we've...
Let me go back a step. Where are you from?
I have been living in Knoxville, Tennessee for the past few years, and that's where we started the campaign.
And before that?
From North Carolina, in central North Carolina. And so we've focused on mobilizing cities in the South against mountaintop removal and against the funding of mountaintop removal. And then we recently, so in November, we had a big action camp in Connecticut, which is the home, the headquarters of the North American headquarters of UBS. So we had an action camp, like 30 to 35 activists came together from the Northeast and from Appalachia to work together, and then pulled off the actions that we did.
All right, before we get to the actions, have you seen the results of mountaintop removal yourself?
Yeah. I've been involved in the struggle against mountaintop removal for the past 3 years. I've been working pretty full time to end mountaintop removal. And so I've spent a lot of time in West Virginia. I've just recently moved to Raleigh County, West Virginia, which is pretty surrounded by mountaintop removal sites.
What does it look like?
It's a devastated area. It's just really, there's no trees, no life. Just completely compacted earth.
You just blow up the top and then harvest?
Yeah, so they clear cut areas and then drill holes and put explosives in them and then blow off the tops of the mountains, take everything that isn't coal, which they term overburden, and dump it into the surrounding valleys, which is really what buries the streams. And then to expose the seams of coal, then they take the coal and then dig it out, and then in the process have buried over 2,000 miles of streams.
It's legal in West Virginia to do that?
It is legal to do, and that's something that we've been fighting since the 70s, and really there's a century-long history of resistance in Appalachia to the coal industry and to the oppressive nature of the coal industry.
You have to say there's a party going on downstairs. Yeah. I hope we can hear some of this.
I hope so too.
So you got arrested in November for what?
So we went to the North American headquarters of UBS, which is in Stamford, Connecticut. That's where they make all of their funding decisions about extractive industry. So on a couple of days before, we actually had a meeting with UBS. 3 people from our campaign met with UBS officials, which was in itself a victory for the campaign. We've been trying to achieve that meeting since we started back in 2012. So we had a meeting with them, and they kept pointing to their inadequate policy about mountaintop removal that they've made public in 2011 and still have continued to fund mountaintop removal. And so the meeting, they just kept pointing to their inadequate policy, and they wouldn't make any concessions, wouldn't hear, just didn't understand really what their actual practices were doing in Appalachia. So we were at their, they host the UBS Parade Spectacular in Stamford every year for a Thanksgiving Day parade, and we were there and were able to interact with thousands of people. We hand build and had puppets, and it was just a big day of outreach for the campaign. And then the next day, there were 2 people who dropped a banner from a construction crane across the way from UBS.
How did they get to the top of a crane?
They climbed it with a big banner. It was a huge banner, and it was right in the viewpoint of UBS, and it said, "UBS stop funding mountaintop removal." And then I and my friend Dee walked into the UBS office and dropped a banner from the top of the steps, and there's a whole glass building, and we dropped a banner and then locked our necks to the railing of the stairs.
And there were arrests, I understand?
Yeah, and then so we were arrested, the people on the crane were arrested, and there was also people who locked themselves to the outside of the building. So in total, 14 people were arrested during that day of action.
And you've been to court twice, and what's been the result of that?
Yeah, they just continue kicking the ball down the line. We have our pre-trial hearing March 20th, which we're going to invite a lot of people to come to and support that day and really bring the attention back to mountaintop removal and back to UBS that continues to fund it. And yeah, we have... it just seems like it's going to be a long process to go through this court proceedings. They want to make us pay a large restitution amount, but we don't have that much funding at all, and we really want to use our funding to to work on projects that.
The people in West Virginia who are affected in these valleys support you, know about what you're doing?
Yeah, people have been really excited. The resistance movement has been really excited to see this urban base of support, and especially coming from Tennessee, out of Tennessee, which there's so much organizing work happening in all areas of in Appalachia, and it was just really exciting for them to see this work. And a lot of people there was a big contingency of folks who have been working against mountaintop removal come up to the camp with us and who have been living in Appalachia and came up with us. And yeah, it's definitely a really polarizing issue in West Virginia because of the mono economy of coal there. But there is a lot of community support, and people are really excited to see us targeting the people who are profiting, like the UBS that is just really taking all of the profit in the coal companies.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dan, I understand you took part in the demonstration in Stamford.
Yeah, I was part of a group of people who climbed up on a construction crane in downtown Stamford and dropped a 30 by 45 foot banner calling out the Swiss investment bank UBS for their financing of mountaintop removal coal mining in Appalachia.
Now, first, what's it like to climb that crane? It looked in the pictures like it was 100 feet high.
We estimated it might have been 160 feet up. After being, training and being prepared for it, it wasn't particularly scary. It was, a little exhilarating to be up there, but the focus was really on what we were there to do and to do it in as safe a way as possible.
Are you a mountain climber?
I have some experience doing different kinds of climbing.
Okay. So you climbed up with another person with a very large banner?
Yeah, we climbed up with a few people with a large banner. And got it on the arm and dropped the banner so that it was facing the headquarters of UBS. And it was a fairly large banner, and it was a little windy that day. So myself and another person were actually hanging from the banner the whole time it was deployed to weight it down, which was also a way to, yeah.
And I figure people looked out the window at this banner.
I'm sure they did. Sooner rather than later, it seemed like the whole emergency responder corps of Stamford showed up. Police, EMS, the fire department. They blocked off a lot of streets around the construction site, but there was nothing they could really do. We were in a position where we were the ones who knew how to maneuver out there, and we knew how to do it safely. So they weren't sending anyone out after us, and which gave us the opportunity we needed to stay out there and get our message out.
And what did the banner say?
It said in no uncertain language, UBS, stop funding MTR, stop funding mountaintop removal, which was a direct communication to the UBS headquarters that if they're going to engage in dirty business, we're going to try to embarrass them in the public arena about it.
Now, how did you get involved in this? Have you been down there? Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. I've been to Appalachia a handful of times. I've been up on mountaintop removal coal mining sites, and it's unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Not being from the mountains, I couldn't actually tell what it was supposed to look like. I was in this what looked like this moon rock, the innards of this mountain that were totally bombed out. This was it was a road for these huge trucks to go up and down, and it was just. the scale was incomprehensible. The mindset went on for miles and miles and miles, but you couldn't tell from where you were standing.
And did you see where they dumped what they consider waste?
Yeah, I saw some valley fills. They were immense. You know, imagine two mountains and driving up the side of another one, looking at them with a big V-shaped blanket of earth and rock in between. It was like, you know, it was a bad dream, right? There was this big earthwork playground that some giants had made, except it was really made with explosives and big digging machines and, you know, for people to dig the coal deep out of the mountains.
I understand you've been involved in other kinds of action. You mentioned something in Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania?
I am involved with groups who are interested in, you know, fighting energy extraction in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's, you know, where I went to college and where I'm based out of now. St. Louis is home to a number of coal companies, and we think that, you know, if they're gonna blow up our Earth and try to wreck our climate anywhere, we need to stop them everywhere. So it was just sort of a matter of like knowing people working in Appalachia and wanting to lend a hand to this really long struggle.
And part of it, I assume, is you're alarmed at the carbon dioxide and that's causing the global warming and such.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a climate aspect to all of this. You know, and what's really scary is that with some of the recent reports from, you know, the mainstream and like farther out climate scientists I've heard, we're really on the verge of, if not past, significant tipping points. And so that's like sometimes a really discouraging frame to think in, right? We're doing whatever we can to draw public attention to the kinds of destruction that that's leading to climate catastrophe, but on the other hand, we might already be well beyond what the Earth can support in terms of carbon in the atmosphere. So it's also important to remember that, you know, as mining continues for energy, for fossil fuel energy, there are people who are being directly impacted at the site of production. Of course, the climate analysis piece is that it says that, you know, there are so many people everywhere else being affected too. It's just more reason to fight.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
On our site, a video, Kyle Gibson talking about the Beehive Collective and a fabric graphic that they created called The True Cost of Coal. Here's a cartoon by Carlos Latouf for Israel Apartheid Week 2014. A number of events coming up in Connecticut. Go to our website for details. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.